Call your next witness.
Yes, Your Honor.
All right. Who would you like to call?
Your Honor, the state will call Mark Turner.
Mark Turner.
May I approach you?
Yes, sir. Just for the purpose of bond. Absolutely. Good afternoon, Mr. Turner. Please raise your right hand. Do you swear or affirm to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
I do.
Come on up. Mr. Garcia, you may inquire.
Thank you, Your Honor. May it please the court, counsel. Mr. Turner, good afternoon, sir. Mr. Turner, you're probably going to have to speak loudly and clearly, and if you can get closer to that microphone, please, so everyone can hear you. Thank you. Can you state your full legal name, please?
Mark Douglas Turner.
And what is your profession, sir?
I'm currently retired.
And what type of work did you do?
I've retired from the U.S. Air Force after 27 years and retired from the aviation industry subsequently.
And what was your rank upon separation from the United States Air Force?
Lieutenant Colonel.
And what were your duties with the United States Air Force?
I was an aviator flying RC-135s, and I was a human intelligence officer and counterintelligence.
Would you be categorized as a clandestine case officer?
Yes.
And did you perform most of your work, I believe you said, in, was it Japan?
China.
China, I'm sorry, China. What were your duties there?
Basically to collect and recruit intelligence and agents to work on behalf of the U.S. government.
Okay. And part of your duties were to obviously ferret out any type of terrorism.
Yes.
So you are trained to observe things.
Yes.
And were you trained in the military to do this, or how did you receive your training to become a clandestine case officer?
I received training at federal agencies.
Okay. Several federal agencies?
Yes.
How many years were you with the United States Air Force?
27.
So I would assume in that 27-year career you went to a lot of different agencies.
Yes.
Is that a fair assumption?
It is.
Okay. Directing your attention to January 13th of 2014, did you have occasion to go to the Cobb movie theater here in Pasco County, Florida?
I did.
Did you go there with your wife?
Yes.
And what movie were you going to see?
Lone Survivor.
And do you recall what time it was going to start?
About 1:35, if I remember correctly.
Okay. And do you know what time you arrived at the movie theater?
We got there about 1:25.
Okay. Did you go into the movie theater?
Yes.
And upon going into the movie theater, were the previews playing?
Yes, they were.
Okay. And upon arriving there, was Mr. and Mrs. Olson already sitting in the movie theater?
Yes, they were.
Was Mr. Reeves and his wife likewise sitting in the movie theater?
She was. He was not.
Okay. Where did you sit in the movie theater?
We were in the same row as Mr. Reeves at the first seat in that aisle.
Okay, so you would have been in the back row, which is row A?
Right.
And how many seats were you from Mr. Reeves?
I would say about 5 seats, 6 seats perhaps.
Okay. And was your wife closest to Mr. Reeves, or were you closer to Mr. Reeves?
She was closest. I was on the end seat. And
So I'm sorry, you were actually on the aisle seat.
That's correct.
All right. You said that you saw him coming back into the movie theater.
Yes.
Did you observe anything unusual about his demeanor when he was coming back?
No, he was polite. He stepped in front of me and excused himself, and I moved to let him pass.
Okay.
And he walked on by.
All right. And did something draw your attention to where Mr. Reeves was sitting and where Mr. Olson was sitting?
Well, only that I followed him back to his seat just because I got to watch movement as it was going by. And when he got back to his seat, I happened to notice that there was a dialogue going on between himself and Mr. Olson.
Okay. And why do you watch movement?
Just because of my training. It's something that I've done for so many years. It just stays with you.
Okay. You do it routinely.
Yes.
Is it fair to say that you make yourself aware of your surroundings and what's going on at all times?
Always, yes.
Did you do that on this day?
Yes.
Were you scanning the movie theater? Were you looking around?
I was scanning.
Okay. And did you see either a confrontation or a conversation between Mr. Reeves and Mr. Olson?
I saw a conversation.
Could you see it clearly?
Very.
Was there anything that was blocking your view?
No. No.
Was the lighting conditions such that you could actually see?
I could see Mr. Olson very clearly. I didn't see Mr. Reeves all that clearly once he was set in his seat.
All right. Would you tell us in your own words what you observed that day?
What I saw and heard was Mr. Olson standing at his seat talking to Mr. Reeves, and he had said to him, basically, he said, do you mind, I've got a voicemail from my babysitter. I'd like to check to see that my daughter is okay.
This was Mr. Olson?
Mr. Olson.
Okay. Did Mr. Reeves respond?
I didn't hear or see him respond. The only thing that I could say from Mr. Olson's demeanor was that whatever was said, something must have been said because his demeanor changed.
Objection, Your Honor. Move to strikes. Calls for speculation.
Based upon your
Overruled. Second. You may continue.
based upon your observations, you drew a conclusion that his demeanor changed.
Yes, it was obvious that he did because it was at that point that Mr. Olson threw his popcorn at Mr. Reeves.
Okay. Did you at any time see Mr. Olson strike Mr. Reeves? Well, I'm talking about with a fist,
No,
a slap,
absolutely not.
a cell phone.
No,
You never saw that.
it didn't happen.
Okay. Did you ever see Mr. Olson reach across towards Mr. Reeves?
No,
The only thing you saw was a bag of popcorn.
bag of popcorn.
What's the next thing that happens?
Almost immediately, the gun came out, the shot was fired, and it went back into Mr. Reeves' lap, and almost immediately words were spoken by Mr. Reeves to the effect that said, throw popcorn in my face.
You distinctly remember Mr. Reeves saying that.
Yes.
Let's talk about the motion in drawing the weapon and putting it back. What type of motion was it?
It was very fluid, very fast, to which you would gather that either he had the gun in his hand at the time or it was a practice motion. I mean, it was obvious that it wasn't the average civilian who would be grappling for the gun or trying to get it out of his waistband or what have you.
Did you ever see Mr. Reeves get out of his chair?
Never.
Did he sit in that chair the entire time?
Yes.
Did you hear any statements from Mr. Olson after being shot?
Yes. Once he was shot, he took a step as if to turn towards his wife, and he said, "I can't believe this." And then at that point, he began to fall backwards, and the gentleman that was sitting next to him caught him, and they laid him down in the aisle. And that was the last words that I believe he spoke.
Do you see Mr. Reeves in the courtroom today, sir?
I did.
If you would, please, can you point him out and describe what he's wearing?
Here, in the red vest.
Your Honor, I'd ask the record to reflect that Mr. Turner has identified the defendant in this case, Mr. Reeves.
Mr. Escobar, do you have any objection to the in-court identification?
No, Your Honor.
All right, record may so reflect. You may continue, Mr. Garcia.
Did you hear any threats from Mr. Olson to Mr. Reeves?
No, sir.
May I have a moment, Your Honor?
You may.
Nothing further, Judge.
Thank you, Mr. Garcia. Mr. Escobar, you may.
Thank you, Your Honor.
Inquire.
Good afternoon, Mr. Turner.
Yes, sir.
Mr. Turner, what time did you get to the movie theater?
I believe it was about 1:25.
Okay, and you had gone with your wife?
Yes.
Okay, I see you wear glasses.
Yes.
Is that correct? What is your vision when it's not corrected?
To be honest, I don't really recall.
When's the last time you've been to an eye doctor?
Last year.
Okay, you just don't know what the vision
I
is?
just don't, I don't recall.
Okay. Now, when you came into the theater, the trailers were already showing, is that
Right.
correct? Okay. And so I would imagine when you came to the theater, it was dark.
It was semi-dark. The house lights weren't all the way down.
Okay. And so you were able to get to your seat, correct?
Yes.
And you were seated in the last row, is that correct?
Yes.
Of the general admission section?
Of that section, yes.
Okay. And so right behind you, there would be a 6-foot wall, is that
Right.
correct? Okay. And so when you sit down, you're the first seat from the aisle.
That's correct.
So if Mr. Reeves was seated in seat number 9, that would be 8 from you, correct?
Okay, yes.
Is that correct? As you sit here today, you really don't know how many seats Mr. Reeves was seated from you, correct?
I didn't count them, no. I don't know precisely the seat number that he was in.
And those particular seats at the Cobb Theater are quite wide, are they not?
I assume they're an average seat. I don't know.
Is that the first time you've been to the Cobb?
Nope. I mean, a seat is a seat. I don't know how wide they are.
Okay. Now, the seats in front of you, they recline back, correct?
Yes, I guess.
Okay. So your wife was closer to Mr. Reeves than you were.
Right.
You all were seated side by side.
Right.
And so you would have to either look around her in order to make some observations, correct?
Not really, but she didn't obstruct my field of view, if that's the point you want to make.
Well, if Mr. Reeves is seated in that row,
Right.
and your wife is right next to you,
Right.
you would have to either look around your wife or over your wife, I guess.
My wife is sitting back in her seat, and I'm sitting forward. Then I have a complete field of view to.
So you don't, when you go to the movies, you don't sit back on your seat.
When I'm sitting in the seat and I'm scanning, I make a field of view for myself.
Tell me why you were scanning that day.
I scan every place we go
But why?
because that's what I do.
Are you scanning for trouble?
I scan to know my surroundings.
Okay.
It's
Okay. So you sit down, and I would imagine that Mr. Olson was how many seats from you?
the same number of seats as Mr. Reeves, only one row down.
Okay. And in that theater, as you go down in the rows, there's a small downward step. Is that
Right.
correct?
That's correct.
Okay. And so the seats below you sit a little bit lower than your seat.
Yes, sir.
And so if you're seated in your first seat there, would Mr. Olson be to your right or to your left?
To my left.
He'd be to your left?
Yes.
Okay. And so I would imagine that Mr. Olson and Mr. Reeves were not the only people in the theater.
That's correct.
Okay. And do you remember anybody else that day there at the theater as you were scanning around?
Are you asking me, do I remember anyone in detail?
In any detail?
Not particularly,
I didn't think so.
but at that point,
Judge, I'm going to object to the gratuitous comments. Judge, they're uncalled.
Sustained. It's not necessary to say that, Mr. Escobar.
Now-
You may continue.
you're seated, and I would imagine you're also focused on the trailers?
No, I was uninterested in the trailers at that point.
So you're not watching the screen at all?
No, sir.
Okay. But along with those trailers, there's noise, right?
Yes, sir.
And when you have trailers at a movie theater, they're generally louder than the movie itself.
Okay, yes.
And so you were scanning, but also listening to the noise within that theater, correct?
Yes,
The lights were, at the very best, dim, correct?
yes.
And so you couldn't see clear detail, correct?
No, sir. I could see very clearly.
So you could see detail.
I could see detail.
Okay, well, tell me what you noticed Mr. Olson wearing.
Mr. Olson was wearing a pair of jeans and a light-colored shirt.
What color?
I don't recall the color.
Okay. What about Mr. Reeves?
I don't recall what Mr. Reeves was wearing. As I said, I didn't pay attention to him as he walked by me. I was sitting down at the time, and I just turned to let him by. And once he sat down, my vision of him was blocked by his wife, where he was sitting at the time.
Okay, well, when he came by you, he was polite, correct?
Yes.
Wasn't agitated, correct?
Did not seem to be.
Wasn't mumbling anything?
No.
And said, "Sir, excuse me."
He said, "Excuse me," yes.
As a nice gentleman would.
Yes.
And he moved to his seat.
Yes.
Now, Mrs. Reeves was between your wife, who was seated to your left,
Yes.
and Mr. Reeves. Is that correct?
That's correct.
So the scenario is you in the first seat, your wife in the second seat, and then a series of seats, and then Mrs. Reeves, correct? And then Mr. Reeves.
Right.
Okay. And so what you're telling me is that when he sat down, you could not see the area around Mr. Reeves because Mrs. Reeves was blocking him.
Right.
Now, the reason that Mr. Reeves indicated to you that he wanted to excuse himself as he was coming into the aisle is because the people that sit sometimes recline back on those chairs, correct?
Objection, Judge, calls for speculation.
No rule on that one.
Those backs recline.
Well, I wouldn't say that. I think it's because my knees were straight in front of my chair, and regardless if they're leaning back or not, the backs don't leave you much room to walk anyway.
I get you. Okay. So now Mr. Reeves is seated, and you're indicating that you observed something going on with Mr. Olson. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay. Now, the first time that you observed Mr. Olson, was he seated or standing up?
Standing.
He was standing.
Standing.
So even though you had scanned the theater, as you normally do, you had not noticed Mr. Olson until that gentleman stood up.
I'm sorry, say again?
Even though you had scanned the theater, when you came in and sat down, as you normally say you did, you hadn't noticed Mr. Olson until he stood up. Mr. Olson.
Yes, he was standing. When I was scanning, he was standing already.
Okay. Was that before Mr. Reeves had come back to sit down?
Yes.
Okay. And so what was he doing standing?
He was looking at his phone.
So he was standing in the middle of the theater, the trailers were going, and he was looking at his phone, and Mr. Reeves was nowhere in the theater.
Right.
Okay. And so how long did Mr. Olson stand up with his phone in his hand prior to Mr. Reeves arriving?
Just a very short time.
What is a short time?
A couple of minutes.
Okay, well, let's talk about that. I would imagine that if he was standing, obviously the announcement, "Put your phones away," had long come because the trailers were playing, correct?
Actually, I can't say, because from the time that we arrived and sat in our seats, that portion of the video where they normally announce, put the phones away, to my recollection, had not come across the screen yet.
So you don't know if it came
So
before?
I don't know.
Okay, so someone standing up in the middle of a theater while the trailers are going, do you find that to be odd?
I don't, because I do the same thing, mostly because I have a back condition and I stand as long as I can before I'm going to have to sit for long periods.
Well, what about Miss Reeves that was sitting there trying to watch the trailers?
What about her?
You think that,
Does anyone object to relevancy? What relevancy does this have?
Sustained. Do you have any other questions?
Miss Reeves was still seated as Mr. Olson was standing up, correct?
Yes.
Okay. So you didn't find that to be odd?
No, sir.
Okay. And so then Mr. Reeves comes in,
Yes.
excuses himself.
Yeah.
Mr. Olson is still standing up.
Yes.
Mr. Reeves sit down. Mr. Olson is still standing up. That's what you remember.
And they're engaged in conversation.
Did Mr. Reeves and Mr. Olson engage in conversation before Mr. Reeves sat down?
Not that I can speak to directly.
And so now Mr. Olson's still standing up this whole time, Mr. Reeves now sitting down, and you believe that there is conversation taking place.
I'm certain of it
Okay, and why are you certain that conversation is taking place at this point in time?
because I heard it
Okay, did you hear where the conversation was coming from?
from Mr. Olson.
From Mr. Olson? Okay, now, Mr. Olson is, if Mr. Reeves is in seat number 9, and Mr. Olson is right in front of him,
Yes, sir.
that's about 8 or 9 seats from you, correct?
Yes.
And you're telling us to hear under oath today that you could hear Mr. Olson.
Yes.
And Mr. Olson was saying what at that time?
He said, do you mind? I'm checking, or I've got a voicemail from my daughter, or from my daughter's babysitter. Do you mind if I check to see that my daughter's all right?
Okay, let's stop there for a second.
Okay.
The noise of the trailer, the actual previews,
Right.
are going on at the same time that you're hearing this conversation, or this statement. It's a statement, correct?
Right.
Okay. Did Mr. Olson at that point in time appear to you to be agitated?
No, sir.
Appeared to be calm?
Yes.
So at this point in time, you didn't hear any curse words?
No.
You didn't hear any raising of the voice? Nothing?
If you would have asked me, I would have thought that it was a conversation between two acquaintances.
Okay. Can you tell me at this point in time whether you had yet seen Mrs. Olson?
Not that I'd paid any attention to, no.
Okay, so although you were looking at Mr. Olson, you did not see a female next to him?
No, not that I had paid attention to. By this time, you know, because he was standing up and I had heard his voice, the fact that he had said, "Do you mind?" caught my attention, and so drew my focus to him more closely at that point.
Well, but if he's standing up and his wife is right next to him, seated or standing up, you got some peripheral vision, right?
Peripheral vision to me is sideways, not downwards, and she was sitting.
So definitely at this point in time, you didn't see any female standing up?
I didn't. No.
Okay. Okay, and so that statement is made. What do you hear next?
The next, I don't hear anything. I personally drew a conclusion.
Well,
I know you didn't ask.
I want to know.
I didn't hear anything.
You did not hear anything. Okay.
No.
How much time lapsed after that statement by Mr. Olson before you hear anything again?
5 seconds, 10 seconds max.
Okay. And what is Mr. Olson doing during this 5 seconds and 10 seconds that you've talked about?
He threw his popcorn at Mr. Reeves.
Let's talk about that. Had you seen Mr. Olson when he was there in the theater prior to him standing up, had you seen him with popcorn?
No, I only saw him as he was standing there with his phone and his popcorn during the time that I described to you.
Okay, and so you're saying that Mr. Olson was standing up with a phone in which hand?
Right hand.
Okay, and describe to the court that phone as you remember it.
Black. Small, not as if it was an iPhone, but smaller. I don't recall the brand.
You're familiar with iPhones, are you not?
I am.
Okay, and so you can recognize an iPhone.
Yes.
It wasn't an iPhone.
I don't believe it was.
You're saying it was much smaller.
I think so.
Okay, and he had that in his right hand?
I believe so.
And you said he had a container of popcorn?
A bag of popcorn.
Okay, a bag.
A bag of popcorn.
B-A-G, bag. Not a cup, not a box.
A bag.
A bag.
A bag.
And he had that in his?
Left hand.
Left hand, okay. And was he looking at the trailers? Was he looking back at Mr. Reeves? What was his position at that point in time?
He was turned at an oblique angle.
Okay, you tell me when. You tell me when. There's Mr. Reeves.
Yes.
Here I am. Tell me when to stop.
He's turned at a 45-degree angle to the left from Mr. Reeves,
Is that where I'm at?
to the opposite side.
Oh, okay, so he is,
Just a little bit more to your right,
okay,
a little bit more,
okay,
about right there.
about right here.
Yeah.
Okay. And so if you're here, you're able to see the phone and this bag of popcorn.
Right,
Okay. In his hand.
right.
Okay. And so how long? He's there 10 seconds. What's he doing during that 10-second period?
He throws the popcorn, and almost immediately the gun comes out and the shot's fired.
How does he throw the popcorn?
With the bag, not as if it's to empty the popcorn, but the whole bag is just thrown towards Mr. Reeves.
Okay. And he's using you're using there your left hand. Is that correct?
Right.
Is that the hand that you remember Mr. Olson using to throw this bag of popcorn?
Yes.
Okay. And you've made a motion that he threw it from his side at Mr. Reeves?
Yes.
How big was that bag of popcorn?
I would have guessed it was a small bag. I don't think it was one of the large ones that
Do
they
you know
sell.
what color it was?
Red and white.
And so I would imagine at this point in time you became alarmed.
I really didn't become alarmed. I didn't have time to think at that point because once that popcorn was thrown, almost instantly the shot rang out.
Let's talk a little bit about that. In that period of time that you indicated, 10 seconds max, that Mr. Olson was standing up with the bag of popcorn in his left hand and his phone in his right hand, you're saying he was in front of Mr. Reeves, is that
Yes.
correct? And in movie theaters, especially during the trailers, not only are the lights dimmed down considerably, but the only other light that you have is maybe from the screen itself.
Right.
And you would agree that if Mr. Olson was standing in front of Mr. Reeves, some of that light from that screen would be obstructed.
Okay.
Mr. Olson was a pretty big guy, wasn't
He was.
he? What did you estimate his height to be?
I would say he's probably 6'1".
Would you be surprised he was bigger than that?
Perhaps.
So are you telling me then that the act of throwing popcorn, well, first of all, where did Mr. Olson throw this bag of popcorn?
Where did he throw it?
Yeah, where on Mr. Reeves' person are you suggesting that he threw it?
He threw it to the center mass section of Mr. Reeves, to his right here.
Okay. And how could you tell if Mrs. Reeves was there?
Well, just from his standing position, Mr. Reeves' sitting position, he's only got, this much room of a target to throw it at. So, I mean, where else would he have?
So you didn't see the popcorn actually?
I didn't see the popcorn land on him, no.
You just saw a bag flying?
I saw a bag thrown in the direction of Mr. Reeves.
Did you ever think it was a thermos that was being thrown?
No,
Or a cup?
no.
Did you ever have a conversation with your wife where she told you she believed that's what it was?
I did have a conversation with my wife.
And she told you she thought it was a thermos?
No, she never said that.
Any conversations between he and his wife?
She never said that.
He's answering anyway.
So she never said that it was a thermos or a cup?
No.
Did you see your wife speaking to law enforcement in this case concerning what she had seen?
I'm sorry, at what time?
You spoke to law enforcement after the incident.
Object to the relevancy of this question is his wife speaking to law enforcement.
I'm going to tie it up later on, Your Honor.
Move to it quickly. I'll let you ask this question, and we'll see where it goes next.
You spoke to law enforcement after this incident, correct?
Yes, sir.
And so did your wife?
Yes, sir.
Okay. And you gave a verbal and a written statement, correct, to
I
law
did, sir.
enforcement?
Yes, sir.
And so did your wife?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Let's get back to the incident.
Okay.
So you believe that this bag was thrown somewhere in the front of Mr. Reeves' torso, upper
Yes, sir.
torso. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay. But you didn't see it land?
I did not.
Okay. And you say that how much time lapsed before the next event occurred?
Seconds.
Okay. You know how many seconds? And I want you to think back to that event. If you can't give me an accurate answer, then tell me you can't. How many seconds do you believe?
From the time that the popcorn was thrown to the time that the shot rang out, 3 to 5 seconds.
Now, you're telling us that during this entire period of time, this 10 seconds, at no point in time did you see Mrs. Olson holding her husband back, having an actual hold of him and holding him back.
No, sir.
And you know what she looks like,
I do.
right? You see her in court today, blonde hair.
I do.
You saw her that night there?
I did.
Okay. And you're telling this court you didn't see any of that whatsoever?
No, I did not.
Now, you're saying that you heard a noise that you believe to have been what?
A gunshot?
A gunshot. You didn't see the actual firing of the gun?
I did.
Okay, well, let's take me there. Where did you see that gun the first time you saw it?
The first time I saw it was when it was in the hand of Mr. Reeves, and he brought it out and fired.
Okay. So the first time that you see that gun is not where he retrieves it from, but the first time that you see that gun is once it's already in his hands. Correct?
That's right.
Okay. And you're saying that the first time that you saw it in his hands, that gun was where in reference to his body?
It was here.
Okay. You're almost giving me almost like a bent elbow.
Well, if this helps you out, it's in a firing position.
Well, do you know if his elbow was bent or if his elbow was straight?
Straight.
Okay. So you believe Mr. Reeves' elbow was straight and the gun was in front of him.
Right.
Could you tell at that point in time what kind of gun it was?
No, I could not.
And why not?
Because it was too far away for me to tell.
I mean, the
I knew-
darkness would not allow you to do that?
It means, well, it was too far. It was a small gun. I knew it was a small caliber weapon, but I didn't know what.
Okay. And so you heard how many shots?
One.
One shot? Okay.
One shot.
And so now what happens?
The gun is very quickly back into his seat or whatever, wherever he put it.
You didn't see where Mr. Reeves put it?
No, and I was standing at that time in my seat, or not in my seat, but I was standing at my seat.
Okay.
And I watched him withdraw the weapon back, but I couldn't tell if he had a holster to his side or if he just put it in the seat next to him or where he actually put it. No, I couldn't tell.
Okay. And so you're telling this court that before you heard that shot, you didn't hear any curse words, any loud yelling at all by Mr. Olson?
No, absolutely not.
Are you telling this court as well that as Mr. Olson was standing up, that he was not leaning over his chair towards Mr. Reeves?
What I saw was, in fact, Mr. Olson was standing at his seat, and in fact, you could say he was leaning over, but not in an aggressive manner, as you would, as anyone would have a barrier in front of them as you're talking. You might lean forward as you're talking.
Well, how far was he leaning into that aisle?
Just inches because of the seat in there. I mean, I could stand up and show you, but if you'd like, but it wasn't that he was over into the space of the next row.
Well, I think you've already indicated to me that as you're seated, there's not much space between
Right.
your knees
Right.
and the backrest of row B, correct?
If I were to tell you that Mr. Olson, if he were bent at the waist more than, I don't recall his name, but I was questioned by someone.
Did you tell Mr. Soto that you believed that Mr. Olson was irate?
I did not.
Now, up until the time of the shot, you had not been able to hear any of the conversations that Mr. Reeves was having himself, correct?
Correct.
Couldn't hear him at all?
Correct.
Throughout the conversation?
Correct.
Is that correct?
It is, sir.
But you're telling this court that you could hear Mr. Olson,
Yes.
and you were relatively the same distance, in fact, probably closer to Mr. Reeves, because you were in the same row, than you were from Mr. Olson, correct?
I would say about the same.
Okay, with the exception of the distance forward, correct?
Very, yes.
But you couldn't hear anything that Mr. Reeves was saying, but you could certainly hear what Mr. Olson was saying.
Yes.
And you're telling this court under oath that the only
I don't
time...
object to him constantly saying under oath. Everything that's done in this court is under oath.
Okay.
Why does he have to keep doing that to the witnesses, Judge?
I think it's a habit. It's not a problem. I well know that we're under, well...
Well, Judge, I'd ask that you ask Mr. Escobar to quit doing it, Judge. He seems like he's trying to intimidate the witness by constantly saying it's under oath.
Mr. Garcia, I don't think that this witness is going to be intimidated by anybody.
Judge, but this is not the first time. He's done it constantly, over and over and over again.
I understand. It's something we're going to work on. Mr. Escobar, please don't do that anymore. All right?
Back to my question. Sir, the only time you're saying that you heard Mr. Reeves was after you heard the shot.
Yes.
Is that correct?
That's correct.
And you believe that something to the effect of, quote, throw popcorn in my face, will ya? Let's try to examine those words. Did you hear the word throw? That exact word.
Yes.
Did you hear the word popcorn?
I did.
Did you hear the word will?
No.
Thought it was throw popcorn in my face, will you?
No, sir. It was throw popcorn in my face.
Oh, it was just throw popcorn in my face.
Right.
Okay. And you heard every one of those words?
I did.
Any reason why you heard those and didn't hear the others?
Judge objected to the form of the question. Why?
I'll rephrase it, Your Honor.
Sustained.
I'll rephrase it.
Do you have any other questions, Mr. Escobar?
After the firing of the gun, there's quite a bit of commotion, right?
Actually not.
It wasn't.
It was not. Actually, it was very, very calm, almost freeze frame-like for a short period of time.
Well, let's talk about this a little bit. The shot rings out,
Yes.
correct? I would imagine your focus is on Mr. Olson, correct?
No,
It was not.
it was
So
not.
you didn't see him come in your direction?
I saw Mr. Olson turn out of the corner of my eye, but I never took my eye off of Mr. Reeves.
Okay. And so you had your eye on Mr. Reeves, but did you see Mr. Olson come in front of you? Even out the corner of your eye?
He just turned in his aisle.
Okay.
Is that what you mean?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And did he come down row B?
No,
He just fell right there?
he fell right there.
Okay. And so right where his seat was is where he fell?
He tried to take a step where his seat was at. He made the statement, "I can't believe this," and he began to collapse.
Right there?
Right there.
So if he was in row 8 or 9, at best he got to 7.
No, at best he got to seat right next to him.
Gotcha. No further questions?
Mr. Garcia, do you have any follow-up questions that you wish to ask this witness?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Well, thank you for coming in today, sir.
Thank you, sir.
Who would you like to call as your next witness today?
Your Honor, the state would call Alan Hamilton.
Alan Hamilton, please. How long do you anticipate for Mr. Hamilton's witness?
At least 45 minutes, Judge.
You remember that part earlier where you said something about 2 hours it was going to take him? I'm thinking we're going to go past 2 hours. How many more witnesses do you have besides Mr. Hamilton?
Judge, there's Mr. Hamilton, there's Derek Friedhoff, there's Detective Proctor, there's Detective Aaron Smith.
All right. Are any of those going to be short in duration witnesses, or are they all going to be approximately 50 witnesses, 50 minutes as the last two were?
Friedhoff should be quicker.
Okay. That's fine. And I'm not saying this to attempt to rush you or anything. I'm just trying to figure out how late we're going to be here, because if you've got 4 more witnesses and each of them are going to be 50 minutes, well, it's going to be a while.
Just to clarify with the court, Judge, when I said 2 hours,
Yeah.
that was not taken into consideration the cross-examination, which has obviously been very lengthy as opposed to our direct examination.
I understand. I understand what you're saying. I'm just trying to figure out what our time frame is going to be like
It's going to be
tonight.
late, Judge, because we have the video still to consider, we have the audio tape to consider, we have the witnesses to consider.
How long is the audio tape?
It's approximately 15 to 20 minutes, Judge.
Okay.
I'm sorry, 25.
Okay. All right. Let's get that other witness in here and let's get going.
Thank you. Judge Alan Hamilton, please.
Raise your right hand, Mr. Hamilton. Do you swear or affirm to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God? Yes, sir. Come on up, officer. I'm sorry, it's corporal, isn't it?
Yes, sir.
I didn't mean to deprive you of
Yes,
that.
sir.
I apologize.
It's all right.
You may proceed.
Thank you, Your Honor. May it please the court, counsel. Corporal Hamilton, good afternoon, sir.
Afternoon.
Can you state your name, please,
Yes, sir. Alan L. Hamilton, Senior.
and your profession?
I'm a corporal at the Sheriff's Department, Sumter County.
And how long have you been employed by the Sumter County Sheriff's Office?
13 years October.
What are your duties with the Sumter County Sheriff's Office?
I am a road corporal on Alpha shift for the Sheriff's Department. I'm supervisor.
Corporal Hamilton, directing your attention to January 13th of 2014, do you recall that date?
Yes, sir, I did.
Did you and your wife happen to attend the Cobb movie theater?
Yes, sir, we did.
And were you there to see Lone Survivor?
Yes, sir.
Do you remember what time you purchased your tickets?
Like 12:53, I believe.
Okay.
I have a copy of it.
Did that ask for it to reflect that I'm showing State's Exhibit A for identification purposes to Mr. Escobar? May I approach the witness, Judge?
You may.
Corporal Hamilton, I'm handing you what's been marked as State's Exhibit A for identification purposes. Do you recognize these tickets?
Yes, sir.
And are those the actual tickets that you purchased for Lone Survivor?
That is correct, yes, sir.
And you indicated, I believe, it's timestamped January 13th, 2014, 12:53 p.m.
Yes, sir, that's correct.
That's the time that you actually purchased the ticket?
Yes, sir.
And then it says 1:20 on it. Is that the time that the movie would have started?
Yes, sir, that's correct.
Judge, I would offer these in evidence at whatever prospective number it is.
Any objection, Mr. Escobar, for the limited purposes of this hearing?
No objection.
Shall be admitted as State's Exhibit. It's marked as A, but is it 1 still? Well, we haven't had State's 1 yet, have we? So it's State's 1. That's fine.
You purchased the tickets at 12:53 p.m. Did you immediately go into the movie theater, or did you stop to get a drink or popcorn or anything? Or
Yes, sir. I mean, we bought the tickets out at the front booth, which is on the exterior facade of the
right?
theater. The wife and I went inside, and I believe we bought a bottle of water, box of popcorn, a bag of popcorn, and some Cheetos, or
Okay.
whatever they are.
And what is your wife's name, Mr. Hamilton?
Angela.
Angela?
Yes, sir.
When you arrived in the movie theater, were the previews already showing?
No, sir.
Okay. And when you arrived there, was Mr. and Mrs. Olson already seated, as well as Mr. and Mrs. Reeves?
I don't know that.
Okay, you don't know.
I don't know.
All right, where did you sit in the movie theater?
I sat on the lower deck from where the upper deck is, on the very back row, about center on the south side of the theater,
Okay.
close in that area.
Did you later come in contact with a person known to you as Curtis Reeves? Was he sitting in the same row as you?
Yes, sir.
How many seats were you away from either Mr. Reeves or his wife?
Approximately 5 or 6 seats.
All right. Was there anyone in between you all and the Reeves?
Yes, sir. There was another couple. There was, if you want me to tell you.
Yeah, please, if you don't mind, if you could tell us where everyone was when this happened.
We were on the back row again, and they were positioned on the north side of me, to my right. My wife was to my right. Then there was an empty seat. There was a elderly couple and an empty seat, and then Mr. Reeves and his spouse.
And Mrs. Reeves next to him?
Yes, sir.
And then where were the Olsons seated?
The Olsons were seated the next row down in front of Mr. and Mrs. Reeves.
Okay. Did there come a time that something drew your attention to that area?
Yes, sir. I could hear someone's raised voice. And it wasn't a scream. It was just a raised voice above what was going on in there. Normally, it's not loud in there. That brought my attention.
All right. Could you tell where the voice was coming from?
Yes, sir. To my right.
Okay. Could you tell if it was Mr. Reeves or Mr. Olson?
It was Mr. Olson.
Okay. Could you hear what he was saying?
No, sir. I couldn't make out other than just a brief statement that Mr. Olson made, and during that real brief conversation or argument, whatever you want to call it, between them two.
You could not make out what Mr. Olson was saying?
No, sir.
Did Mr. Reeves respond to whatever statement was made to him by Mr. Olson?
I don't know that either.
You didn't hear anything?
No, sir, I don't.
Okay. At that point in time, being a law enforcement officer, did you feel that you had to intervene?
During the conversation between them?
Right, correct.
No, sir.
There was nothing that alarmed you? Nothing you in your own mind would have said, I need to intervene, somebody's going to get hit, there's going to be a fight, nothing like that?
Not at that time, no, sir.
Okay. Tell us what the next thing that happens.
I sit up towards the front of my seat and lean over. I mean, it's just it's a cop thing. Lean up and see what's going on, what's happening. And as soon as I leaned up, I seen it, Mr. Olson. It was like a flick of popcorn, and I just seen some kernels of popcorn in a bag go. And the next, it was just almost instantaneously from there. I seen a muzzle blast and heard, obviously the loud bang.
Did you see did the popcorn hit Mr. Reeves?
I couldn't tell from.
You just saw popcorn
I
fly?
just saw popcorn fly.
You saw a muzzle flash?
Yes, sir.
Did you see did Mr. Reeves have the gun in his hand when the muzzle flash went off? Could you see that?
I couldn't see him, no, sir.
Okay.
Couldn't see him.
Was there any statements attributed to Mr. Reeves either before or after the shooting?
I'm sorry.
Mr. Reeves, did Mr. Reeves say anything after the shot rang out?
I didn't hear him say anything.
Did you hear Mr. Olson say anything?
No, sir.
What did you do then?
As soon as that went on, I'd already made it in my mind of basically what I'm looking for, maybe close proximity of where it's at, and I head in that direction, and I find Mr. Reeves sitting in his chair, him sitting up, and I reached down. There was a weapon on his left knee. I reached down and grabbed the weapon, and I felt, the warmth, in my hand of that weapon. So that kind of alerted me that, okay, I'm in the right spot.
Did you determine the type of firearm it was as far as the model, the make, the caliber?
No, sir, not at the time.
Okay. Did you take the magazine out of the firearm?
Yes, sir, sure did.
Did you clear the chamber?
I attempted to clear the chamber, yes, sir.
Did you identify yourself to Mr. Reeves? Did you show any identification, your badge?
Yes, sir, I did. I immediately, just due to the situation, obviously didn't somebody run over a soda bottle in the parking lot. It was a very definite thing that I knew what was going on. So I wanted to make sure that the person that I was after knew what I was and before I got there, and that we didn't have any more issues or problems. And then if we did, that I'd already announced myself and hopefully lulled the situation.
Did you have your off-duty weapon on you or with you?
I had it with me, but not on me, no, sir.
Okay. When you approached Mr. Reeves after you had taken the firearm away from him, did he make any statements to you?
There was a couple different statements that he made, whenever I approached him. He had said he needed to leave, he needed to get up. Reassured him that he wasn't going to do that, just due to the situation. He wanted to get his cell phone at one point in time. During that, we had, I don't even want to say it's a conversation, just back and forth. It was, he said at one point, and I don't know if you want me to use the...
I do. Please.
He said, I can't, and he pushed his glasses back. He said, I can't believe what I've done. Well, as the process lingered on and basically he continued to want to get up, reassuring him he's not, and I told him why he wasn't going to get up, because I didn't want to get him and me killed, because I knew what was coming through the bottom door down there, or whatever door they may come in. I knew what was coming. So he had asked, he says, I just got hit by something, and look at my eye, and he again pushes and turns his head. I didn't see anything on him.
Did you see any injuries on Mr. Reeves?
No, sir.
None.
No, sir.
After he pushed his glasses up, did he say anything else to you?
At about that time, again, I'm checking for my wife, because there's quite a bit going on. I can hear a distinctive sound that I've heard numbers of times over my career, a gurgling sound. And I leaned kind of backwards and I said, "That's not good." And he again leans back and he says, "Holy fuck, what have I done?"
And when you say that, you're attributing that to Mr. Reeves.
Mr. Reeves, yes, sir.
Did you respond to him?
No, sir.
Did you hear any other statements that were attributed to Mr. Reeves?
No, sir.
Did you hear a conversation between he and his wife?
Yes, sir, I did.
Okay. Can you tell us about that?
Yes, sir. During the first portions, it was dark. They eventually turned on the lights, and he had leaned towards, at the time I didn't know who she was, but she was sitting to his right, leaned towards his wife and made a comment, and then she postured and she said that was no cause to shoot anyone. And then he leaned back around and stuck his finger out, as to, scold her, and said, "You shut your fucking mouth and don't say another word." Mrs. Reeves gets up and goes down one chair and again postures, and the look in her face was just, she was PO'd at him. She was mad at that point. And I just couldn't fathom, and I guess that was in my mind, someone in such a situation that your spouse is always someone that you're going to lean on, not walk away from. So I didn't.
Did Mr. and Mrs. Reeves engage in any other conversation after that?
No, sir.
Did you have any other conversations with Mr. Reeves?
No, sir.
Did the Pasco County Sheriff's Office eventually arrive?
Yes, sir, they did.
And did you later come in contact with a person known to you or identified himself as Sergeant Griner with the Pasco County Sheriff's Office?
Yes, sir.
Do you remember that sergeant coming in?
Yes, sir, I did.
Rather large, 6'6", 6'7"?
He's a big boy, yes, sir.
Okay. And when he came in, did he tell you to kind of like back off? I have this now.
Not in a sense. It was just just kind of a fluid motion.
Okay.
Everything went.
But you saw him then get Mr. Reeves up from the chair. He bent him over the chair in front of him and then handcuffed him, and then they escorted him out of the theater.
Yes, sir. There was two other deputies there that eventually got him in handcuffs, bent him over the chair in front of him, and then walked him out. And I never seen him again.
Did you at any time see Mr. Reeves stand up from his chair?
No,
He was sitting the whole entire time.
I never seen him stand up.
Okay. May I have a moment, Judge?
You may.
May I approach the clerk, Judge?
You may.
Your Honor, I'd ask the record reflect the note showing what's been marked as State's Exhibit H for identification purposes to Mr. Escobar. May I approach the witness, Judge? Corporal Hamilton, I'm handing you what's been marked as State's Exhibit H for identification purposes. Do you recognize that firearm?
Yes, sir.
Is that the firearm that you retrieved from Mr. Reeves back on January 13th of 2014?
It is a weapon. It's like by the Kel-Tec.
Okay.
You can feel the Kel-Tec in it. So,
Yes, sir.
yes, sir.
Judge, I would offer this in evidence as State's Exhibit number 2, I believe.
Mr. Escobar, for purposes of the bond hearing, do you have any objection to the picture of the firearm?
No objection.
Shall be admitted as State's Exhibit 2 in evidence without objection. Mr. Garcia, any further questions?
No, sir, Your Honor.
Mr. Escobar, you may inquire.
Thank you, Your Honor. Corporal Allen, good afternoon.
Good afternoon, sir.
Corporal Allen, what time did you actually go into the theater?
Just long enough to walk inside, make our purchase, find our directions to make our purchase, and then my wife and I walked directly into the movie
And
theater.
so you were in the theater before the trailers started to show, correct?
Yes, sir.
You know what the trailers are?
Yes, sir.
The previews, I should call them previews
Yeah,
probably.
they were commercials, is basically what they were.
In a theater, when you first come in and the trailers are not on, it's well lit, correct?
Right.
Okay. At some point in time, as you were seated there with your wife, did the lights go dim?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Is that when the preview started?
Yes, sir.
It was relatively dark at that point in time, correct?
You can still make out, people's, the frames of their person and the person.
But
according to
details
where
is
you're
very difficult.
sitting. Could be according to where they're at.
Okay. And so the trailers are showing, it's darker, you can see figures but not detail. Are you paying attention to the previews?
Yes, sir.
Okay. You watching them?
Yes, sir.
And I would imagine that there was sound to those previews as well, correct?
Yes, sir.
And they were loud because previews are normally louder than the movie.
I don't know about that, but
Well, were they loud?
they're louder than normal. Yes, sir.
Okay. And so you are seated there, and the first commotion that you hear is a commotion from Mr. Olson, correct?
Yes, sir.
And in this particular case, after this incident occurred, you had an opportunity to write out your statement of what you recalled, correct?
That's correct. Yes, sir.
And your memory of this event, I would imagine, is much clearer on the 13th than it is today.
Yes, sir.
And you were able to write that statement in a calm way, correct? Taking your time to write, sort of all like you write a report, correct?
Correct.
And you know how important in your job it is to write a thorough report,
Correct.
because you want to memorialize everything that you remembered that day for a future day,
Correct.
like today, correct?
Correct. Total different circumstances, but yes, sir.
So you were thorough in your statement to law enforcement in your form that you filled out, correct?
The best of my ability at the time, yes, sir.
And you were providing details, chronological details of the events as they occurred,
To the best of my ability, yes, sir.
and you signed that form.
That's correct, yes, sir.
And in addition to signing that form, you had the opportunity to have a conversation with Detective Proctor. Remember Detective Proctor?
Yes, sir. That's correct.
And where did that conversation take place?
It was maybe like in a child's daycare or where children can play
Within the theater building?
within the theater building.
Okay, so he took you to a location away from individuals
Correct, yes, sir.
so that you could have a peaceful, quiet place to converse?
Yes, sir.
And he questioned you in detail concerning what you remembered
Correct.
of the incident, correct?
Yes, sir.
And you would agree that your recollection on the 13th of January is much better than your recollection today.
Should be, yes, sir.
And the whole reason, and you were aware that he was taking notes, correct?
I knew that I was being recorded.
Even better,
Yeah,
right?
right.
And so, and the reason for that is that law enforcement wants to memorialize your events as you remember them that day.
Document the events, yes, sir.
And you do that in your job every day.
Yes, sir.
And you know the importance of it.
That's correct.
So, let's get back to the theater if we can.
All right.
Now, the first commotion that you hear is from Mr. Olson, correct?
Yes, sir.
That what drew your attention from watching the previews to Mr. Olson.
That's correct.
And you're saying that Mr. Olson was to your right?
To my right, yes, sir.
About how many seats from you would you say?
5, 6 seats, I would
Okay.
imagine.
And he was in row B, correct? Which is the next,
That'd be
second
the row in front of us, yes, sir.
Okay. You were in row A, correct?
That's correct.
And so your backrest to your seat is right next to a wall.
That's correct.
It's a 6-foot wall, correct?
I don't know the approximate, but it's tall, yes.
Okay. And so there's no way for you to escape your seat backwards because there's a wall there.
That's correct.
Okay. And behind that wall, up higher, is the Cena Bistro.
Right.
Is that correct?
That's correct.
Okay. And so if you're in row A and Mr. Olson is in row B, he is one step down
That's correct.
to your right.
To my right.
And you've indicated that your wife is to your immediate right.
Yes, sir.
You've got an empty seat, correct?
That's correct.
And you've got another couple.
Couple, yes, sir.
That couple was a rather large couple, correct?
I don't know. I don't think so.
You don't think they were
No, I don't
heavy
think they
set?
were large. No, I don't think they were heavy set.
Okay. And so the first thing that you hear and see with Mr. Olson when he stands up is he leans over the back of his seat. Mr. Olson does.
Correct. Yes, sir.
And he's leaning significantly over his seat. His body is leaning over the back of his seat, correct?
He's propped.
Those seats recline, do they not?
Yes, sir.
As you could see Mr. Olson there, he's a tall gentleman, correct?
Yes, sir.
Big gentleman.
He's tall. Yes, sir.
And his body is pushing over his backrest and into Mr. Reeves' face, correct?
I wouldn't say into his face. No, sir. He
No,
wasn't. doing-
space.
Oh, I thought you said his face. No,
Space.
To his face.
And as he's doing that, he is yelling, I'm trying to text, pardon the language, I am trying to text my fucking daughter if you don't mind.
That's correct.
That's what you remember him saying. This guy was yelling
That's correct.
and he was cursing in Mr. Reeves' face, correct?
Correct.
That alarmed you.
Just the loudness, yes.
Well, did it not alarm you that he was intruding on someone else's space?
I didn't see who he was intruding on, so I was just trying to evaluate the situation.
Certainly it was not the type of behavior that you expected, correct?
Correct.
Using the word fucking in a theater.
Correct.
Now, is there a reason that you didn't tell Mr. Garcia that in direct examination?
No, sir.
Now, had you seen Mr. Olson, as he had stood up, had you seen Mr. Olson with anything in his hands?
Did I see him stand up with anything in his hands?
Yeah.
I never seen him stand up.
You saw him when he was
I
already
seen him already
standing.
standing, yes, sir.
So when he was standing,
Yes, sir.
was he facing the screen or was he facing Mr. Olson? I mean, Mr. Reeves?
He was facing the back wall, away from the screen.
Did you see him having anything in his hands?
No, sir.
No phone,
I didn't see no phone. No, sir.
no bag of popcorn.
Didn't see the back of popcorn.
You had a clear view at that point in time.
Yes, sir.
Could you see detail?
Did I see the details?
Yeah.
I was focusing more on the type of conversation because this incident happened so quickly. It was no more than I set up. The conversation was initially what I was focusing on, and then
I think you indicated earlier in Cross that because of the lighting, it was difficult to see detail. You could see the outlines.
I could see an individual standing there, and I mean, Once this person stood up, my wife and I walked in with them. We walked behind them. So I identified with that gentleman.
You mean
but
Mr.
then
Olson?
Mr. Olson.
What do you mean identify?
I could see his stature from standing there. We had walked in with them later
I
on.
understand. But as you're seated, your wife to your side, and you're looking over there, you're not able to see detail, correct? Facial details.
No, no,
His expression, correct?
no,
You couldn't see whether he had rage in his eyes.
No.
Rage in his face.
no, sir.
But you could tell that he was yelling and cursing.
Yes, sir.
And that yelling and cursing was being directed at Mr. Reeves.
Yes, sir.
Now, you indicated that you actually saw a throwing of popcorn, a bag of popcorn?
I seen the flicker of Mr. Olson's hand, whether he had that bag in his hand or he knocked it away. Only thing I noticed, the next thing I seen was popcorn flying one way
So
or the
let's
other.
talk about flicker. So you're saying that you saw some movement in Mr. Olson's hand.
Right, correct.
Left hand, right hand. Which one?
Don't know.
Why not?
All I seen was just a hand, the hand movement.
So you couldn't
It
tell
would've-
what was in the hand.
It would have had to been closer to me, so I would suggest it would have been in his right hand when he flicked it.
Listen to me for a second so
Yes,
we
sir.
can try to answer each question. You couldn't tell which hand.
Correct.
You couldn't tell what was in whatever hand he was flicking. You couldn't tell what was in that hand.
No, sir.
Now, did you ever make a statement, a written statement, that said that Mr. Olson threw a bag of popcorn?
It appeared to me at the time when I filled out the statement, yes, sir, that he had thrown a bag of popcorn.
But as you sit
From
here
the-
today,
From the moment.
as you sit here today, you can't tell us whether he threw a bag of popcorn or whether you saw a movement of his hand towards Mr. Reeves and then popcorn flew.
All I know is popcorn flew.
And at the time that Mr. Olson was making that motion with his hand, whether it was his right hand or whether it was his left hand, he was leaning over into Mr. Reeves' face, correct?
No, sir.
Oh, so he had backed off there.
No. He wasn't. I don't know if you're trying to explain that this gentleman was, completely across the chair. He was not. He was in a propped position.
Okay, what do you mean by propped?
When I'm saying propped, if you're trying to define it for me as saying this gentleman was leaned completely, there's a little bit of a difference between breaking your body in half and leaning over versus a propped, gestured position. Mr. Olson was not over into the chair, you know what I mean? And that's, if that's what you're
But you
asking.
would agree, at the very least, he was leaning over the back of his seat.
Excuse me, Mr. Olson?
Yes.
Yes, he was propped. And, like you said, the chair is there, but he wasn't over top of the chair.
And that
I can
chair-
show you.
And the
but
back of that chair moves, correct?
The back of the chair does recline a little bit,
And
yes,
it
sir.
moves into Mr. Reeves' face.
Could, yes, sir.
And you saw that.
Yes, sir.
You don't know what Mr. Olson was saying at the time that he was doing a motion with his hand, whether it was his left hand or his right hand, correct?
No, sir.
But you knew he was saying something.
He was saying something, yes, sir.
And that something was something other than the cuss words that you had previously heard, correct?
Are you are you saying prior to, only thing that I heard was just what I wrote on that paper.
That I'm trying to text my fucking daughter if you don't mind.
That's all I heard.
Then you hear a shot go off.
Yes, sir.
Now, At that moment, you move into action, correct?
Yes, sir.
Were you going to be moving into action when you saw Mr. Olson cursing in the middle of the theater and leaning over the back of his chair?
I didn't feel it was necessary at that time.
Why not?
I just didn't.
You hear a shot, you move into action, correct?
Yes, sir.
Mr. Reeves is seated there.
Yes, sir.
The gun is placed on his knee.
Yes, sir.
Doesn't have his hand on the gun,
No, sir.
just there on the knee. Visible for you to see.
Correct.
You retrieve it.
I retrieved it.
He doesn't give you any problems in retrieving that gun.
No, sir. Sure didn't.
Now, while he's seated there, he doesn't tell you that he has to leave. He tells you, I want to get up. Correct?
I need to get up and leave.
Well, are you sure that he said leave or just get up?
He initially wanted to get up, and I didn't want him to get up.
Okay. So initially his words were, I need to get up.
Correct.
Did you ask him why?
No. No, sir.
You could tell he was an elderly man, correct?
That's correct. Yes, sir.
And you remember telling Mr. Proctor, Detective Proctor, the only thing you told Mr. Proctor is that Mr. Reeves had said that he wanted to get up.
Correct. He had said also he wanted to get up.
You never told Detective Proctor that Mr. Reeves allegedly told you that he wanted to leave, did you?
No, sir. I didn't tell Mr. Proctor that.
Why would you not tell the lead detective in this case that statement?
I don't know.
Well,
I just told him.
You didn't think that Mr. Reeves wanted to flee the theater, did you?
No, sir.
Now, of importance in a shooting like this is that the physical evidence there at the scene is preserved.
Correct.
You've been in law enforcement for long enough to know that that is probably the most important part of the whole process, correct?
That's correct. Yes, sir.
Because you want to be able to test items forensically.
Correct.
Forensic analysis most of the time doesn't lie, correct?
That's correct.
And so you wanted to test or preserve the area right around Mr. Reeves because that was the area where gunfire had taken place.
That's correct.
And that was also the area that you had seen Mr. Olson leaning over the back of his seat, correct?
That's correct.
And so when you looked down, and you got to Mr. Reeves pretty quickly, right?
Yes, sir.
You knew that was very important.
Yes, sir.
And so when you got to Mr. Reeves very quickly, you could see that on the floor, in between his legs, was a cell phone.
Yes, sir.
Because as you approach someone like that, after you've taken the gun, you're looking around to make sure that you're safe and that everybody else is safe.
Yes, sir.
And so you immediately saw that cell phone, correct?
That's correct.
In between his legs.
On the floor.
And you recognize that phone to be an iPhone.
I don't know if it's an iPhone.
You don't remember.
It's big enough. It resembles the iPhone or one of the bigger phones. Yes, sir.
Because it was a big phone.
Correct.
It wasn't a little tiny phone.
No.
Still dark.
Yes, sir.
Hadn't turned on the lights yet. Correct?
Correct.
And Mr. Reeves pointed to that cell phone. Did he not?
I don't know if he pointed to it or just gestured that he needed to get. He leaned up. I need to get my phone.
Well,
or get the phone.
let's talk about it. Do you remember exactly what he told you, or did you remember him pointing?
He may have pointed at some point in time or just gestured forward. I don't recall.
You didn't let him touch it, correct?
No, sir, I
You
didn't.
didn't let anybody touch it
No, sir, I
because
didn't.
you wanted crime scene to come over and properly handle it and preserve it.
Hopefully. Yes, sir.
You didn't know whose phone it was at the time,
No,
Correct?
sir. No, sir, I did not.
And you're aware that all sorts of evidence sometimes can be derived from a phone, correct? Fingerprints,
That's correct, yes, sir.
DNA,
Could be,
all kinds of things
yes, sir.
that forensically could help shed some light on what actually happened, correct?
Could be, yes, sir.
And so in your business, when forensics, when crime scene comes in, you want them to wear gloves, carefully pick up that phone, package it, and not open that phone until it gets to the Florida Department of Law Enforcement so that they can, under their controlled conditions, examine it and retrieve evidence, correct?
That's what a forensic specialist probably should do. I'm not. Yes, sir.
Now, you then talked on direct examination about a conversation that you had with Mr. Reeves as you were standing there, waiting for, I guess, law enforcement to arrive?
That's correct, yes, sir.
Because law enforcement had not yet arrived?
That's correct.
It was still dark?
There's a couple different points there. We had conversations when it was light, dark.
Well,
I mean,
at
at
this
some
point in
point,
time, his wife is right next to him, correct?
That's correct, yes, sir.
And you made a statement that he made some awful remark, that his wife said something about that was uncalled for. Is that what you're telling us today?
No, sir, I didn't say it was not called for. I said that she said that there was no cause to shoot him.
Now, you didn't write that in your statement that you wrote on January the 13th of 2014, did you?
That's right.
Overall?
Correct? You didn't write it in your statement, did you?
No, sir. No, sir, I did not.
I'm going to show you what's been marked as defense exhibit number 2. Can I approach you on? And see if exhibit number 2 is a document that you recognize.
Yes, sir. It's mine.
What is that document?
It's a voluntary statement form from Pasco County Sheriff's Department.
Is that your handwritten voluntary statement form?
It is, yes, sir.
Is that a true and accurate copy of your voluntary statement form?
Yes, sir.
It's not been altered, deleted. Take your time and read it, please. If you have any questions, I want to make sure that it is a clean copy.
This is mine.
Okay. Now, in that form, you made no statements as to what Ms. Reeves told Mr. Reeves, correct?
No, sir, I did not.
There's no documentation of that.
No, sir.
And then I believe in direct examination you said something to the effect of, shut your fucking mouth. Excuse my language, Your Honor. Correct?
Yes, sir, that's correct.
You didn't write that in there either.
No, sir, I did.
Those are pretty important statements, are they not?
Yes, sir, you're correct.
But they weren't important enough to put in that statement?
I didn't put them in there. No, sir, I didn't.
My question wasn't whether you put, we know that you didn't put them in there. They weren't important enough for you to put it in that statement?
Sure, they're important.
But let's take it one more step. In addition to you writing this statement in the comfort of your space there, correct?
Yes, sir.
You also had the opportunity of going with Detective Proctor, the lead detective in this case, to that playroom and to discuss with him in great detail everything you knew about this case, correct?
In great detail?
Yeah, you wanted to tell him as much as you could possibly,
Much as we possibly do.
because you knew you were being recorded.
Correct.
Well, did you tell Detective Proctor in that room that Mrs. Reeves had allegedly made that statement?
No, sir, I did not.
Well, did you tell Detective Proctor in that room that my client allegedly said Shut your fucking mouth.
I don't recall if I told him that or not.
You don't recall?
I don't recall whether I told him verbally that or not.
Did you believe that that session with you and Detective Proctor was important?
Yes, sir, it was.
So as you sit here, you can't imagine any scenario why you wouldn't have told him that.
Any scenario why I wouldn't have told him that?
Yeah, you're being recorded. They're asking you to give them all the details of what you know, right?
That's correct, yes, sir.
What you heard Mr. Reeves tell his wife was, Vivian, they're going to come in here storming. Move a couple of chairs over. That's what you heard him say to her.
Judge, I'm going to object. Where's this testimony coming from?
I have no idea, but let's let him answer the question and see.
That's what you heard him say, correct?
No, sir, that's not what I heard him say.
All right.
Mr. Reeves appeared concerned for Mr. Olson, correct?
Object, cause for speculation, Judge.
Overruled, I'll hear that.
Correct?
Did he appear concerned for him?
Yes.
Object to the form of the question. Concerned how, Judge? Concerned that he was going to die?
Overruled, but if you want him to answer the question, you gotta let him answer it, okay? All right, answer the question if you can.
I'm not too sure you can use concern for an incident of this nature. I'm not tracking you on that.
Okay. Law enforcement comes in, correct?
Yes, sir.
They handcuff him, correct?
Correct.
They're not rough with him at all.
Not, no, sir.
Actually, they were actually very gentle with him, correct?
I felt so.
They were telling him commands, and he was complying,
That's correct.
and he went very peacefully with them.
That's correct. Yes, sir.
No further questions.
Okay. Steve, do you have any redirect that you feel compelled to ask Corporal Hamilton?
Yes, Judge. Judge, I want to clarify something. Can Corporal Hamilton step down, please, Judge?
Yeah.
Can you step down, Corporal, please?
Corporal Hamilton over here. It's okay, no, you don't have to lose that, come on over here. I think you need to sit down so that you can do a demonstration.
I'm sorry. I'm sorry.
You don't get to sit in that chair either, I'm pretty sure.
Corporal Hamilton, can you please demonstrate for the court how Mr. Olson was? There's been testimony. Mr. Escobar, in cross-examination, wants the court to believe that he was leaning way over, that the back of the chair was leaning into Mr. Reeves' space.
Let's just leave it, let him show how it looks. Why don't you put another chair there to make the simulation a little bit closer here? If this works for you, Corporal Hamilton, does this work for you?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
And
Mr. Escobar, if you want to reposition yourself so you're in a better spot to see, you're welcome to do so. I know that you're kind of at a disadvantage at that angle. First, give Corporal Hamilton the chance to set up. Is that what you believe the distance is in the chairs? Or do you think they're closer or farther?
It's close, Your Honor.
Okay.
From my position, when I leaned up and I seen this brief argument, Mr. Olson was in a propped position, not, I don't want to maneuver this thing because I'll wind up head first. Not in what defense was trying to say as far as is breaking that ridge in the middle of your body to lean over. He was propped, talking or hauling.
so he was not in any way, shape, or form in Mr. Reeves' space?
No, sir, I'm not. No, sir.
Absolutely not. Didn't happen.
No.
Can you take your seat, please?
Corporal Hamilton, did you at any time see Mr. Olson strike, hit, or touch Mr. Reeves in any way?
No, sir, I did not.
Did you ever see him with a cell phone in his hand and reach up and strike Mr. Reeves on the left side of his head?
No, sir, I did not.
Never happened.
No, sir.
I have nothing further, Judge.
All right, Mr. Escobar, I know you're going to want to ask a few more questions.
Just a couple of them. So your testimony here today is that not only was he leaning over the back of...
Judge, I'm going to object. That's a mischaracterization. He's already said he was not leaning. He was propped.
Overruled. Mr. Corporal Hamilton is a law enforcement officer. It's not his first time testifying. He can correct any mischaracterization if he wants to. It's up to him. All right? I figured we were going to... All right. What you got?
Isn't it a fact that your statement is that, quote, Mr. Olson was leaning over his back seat?
Okay. But I want to make
Answer my question.
leaning,
Judge, I'm going to
leaning.
object, Judge.
Overruled. Hold on. You ask him a question, he gets to answer it. He gets to answer it how he wants to. You get to follow up. Let him answer it.
He was in more of a propped position.
Did
So,
you?
yes, sir, I put leaning on the
Not just leaning, you said leaning over back seat, correct?
back seat. Yes, sir.
Would you like to see your statement?
No, sir, I've seen it.
And this is the same statement that you've told not only Your Honor, but everyone here in this courtroom. And at the time you wrote it, your mind, your memory was much fresher than what it is today.
That's correct.
Your Honor, we would move defense exhibit number 2 into evidence.
Mr. Garcia, any lawful reason I shouldn't take it into Exhibit 2 for the purposes of the bond hearing?
No, sir.
I'll admit it as Defense Exhibit 2 for the purpose of the bond hearing. Mr. Escobar, any further questions for Corporal Hamilton?
No further questions.
Mr. Garcia, any further questions for Corporal Hamilton?
No, sir.
All right, Corporal Hamilton, I can leave. All right. All right. We are now at 5:46. That means we've been going approximately an hour and 20 minutes off the last break. How many more witnesses do you have tonight, Steve?
3, Your Honor.
3. How many of them are going to be more than 15 minutes? And it's just an estimation. I'm just trying to figure out whether we're going to break for dinner or whether we're going straight into this, because people are hungry, I'm imagining, and I can't enthrall my courtroom staff and keep them here forever. They're entitled to some food as
Judge,
well.
I can't in good faith say you're going to be less than 15 minutes because
Well, one of them's got a video that's going to be a few minutes, and another that's got an audio that's going to be 20 minutes. Well-
Friedhoff would be probably the quickest witness, Judge.
Both sides take a chance to powwow with each other and determine whether you want to break and come back here at 6:30 after everybody gets a chance to raid the vending machines in the hallway, or if you want to go right into it. And I'll let anybody and everybody that wants to bring food in can bring food in. I've got a couple of power bars, but that's about it. Otherwise, I don't think we're going to be able to finish today, because that's my other option is I'm taking a break now, and I'll get some other judge to cover my calendar at 1 o'clock on Friday, and I'll do this 1 o'clock on Friday. I can't do it tomorrow morning, I can't do it tomorrow afternoon, and I definitely can't do it Friday morning, so that would be Friday afternoon.
What I would suggest to the court, Judge, is that we go ahead and do Friedhoff now. He should not be that long. And then take a break for court personnel and everyone else, and then resume this bond hearing, Judge.
Okay. You want to keep going?
I want to keep going, Judge. I don't want to...
I want to keep going too, but I got to talk to my courtroom staff and make sure they're going to be okay. Mr. Escobar, do you join the state and want to keep going?
I would agree, yes, Your Honor.
You want to keep going?
Yes, Your
All right. You okay? Can you do another one? You need a break? You do one more? You keep going tonight?
Yeah.
You say I'm going. I'll take a break. It's not fair to you. Do I feel you okay? You're okay. All right. Where's Captain Ferrantelli? He's probably making phone calls. Lieutenant Bain here still? Who's ranking officer?
They already.
Everybody was ranked left. All right.
Just stepped out.
Are we okay? Can we keep going?
Absolutely. We
Okay.
prefer to finish today.
Prefer to finish today? All right, everybody's on the same page. It sounds like great. Call your next witness and state.
The statement called Derek Friedhoff.
All right, the plan would be to take a short recess then after Derek Friedhoff for a comfort break. Then you want to go right back and keep going on witnesses, or you want to give everybody 45 minutes to run McDonald's?
No, Judge, what I was saying is do Mr. Friedhoff, who's going to be a short witness,
Yes.
and then if court personnel and everybody takes 30 or 45 minutes to grab something, and then come back.
30 minutes enough for you? You'll do whatever, 30 minutes, okay? Mr. Escobar and Mr. Michaels, can you get some food in 30 minutes and be back?
Your Honor, I'm good.
Okay, I'm just making sure that I am told that sometimes I go way too long and that I put other people in discomfort. It's not my intention to do that. So, like I said, if anybody needs to bring in food, I know generally there's a prohibition, but if you got a power bar or something like that, trail mix, whatever, you're welcome to it. I don't want anybody passing that on. Where's the witness?
Yes, sir, Judge.
Oh, we're bringing. Yeah. It's not delayed. You can just approach the witness chair. There, I'll give you the oath over here. Raise your right hand. You swear or affirm to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God.
I do.
Have a seat, please. All right. State your name, inquire.
Thank you, Your Honor. May it please the court, counsel. Mr. Friedhoff, can you state your full legal name, please, and spell your last name?
Yes, my name is Derek Sean Friedhoff, F-R-I-E-D-H-O-F-F.
And Mr. Friedhoff, what is your profession?
I'm a registered nurse,
And how long have you been practicing as a registered nurse?
a little over 3 years.
And obviously you're licensed in the state of Florida?
Yes, sir.
All right. Mr. Friedhoff, directing your attention to January 13th of 2014, do you recall that date?
Yes, I do.
And did you attend Cobb Movie Theater on that date?
I did.
And with whom did you go to the movie theater with?
I attended the movie theater with my girlfriend,
Okay. And what movie were you there to see?
Lone Survivor.
Do you know what time you arrived at the movie theater?
We purchased the tickets at 1:16 p.m., and we arrived in the movie theater itself at 1:19 p.m. 1:19 p.m.
Okay. And upon arriving in the movie theater, did anything draw your attention while you were sitting in your seats?
Well, when we currently sat, some bickering caught my attention, so I looked towards the area. Previews came on, so I directed my attention back to the screen.
Okay, and let me stop you. Where were you sitting in the movie theater?
Facing the screen, left-hand side, maybe a quarter of the way in from the aisle.
Okay, and do you know where Mr. and Mrs. Olson were sitting in the movie theater?
Yes, I do.
And can you tell the court where they were sitting?
They were sitting approximately 1 or 2 rows behind me to the right, the opposite side of the movie theater.
Okay. And Mr. and Mrs. Reeves, do you know where they were sitting?
I did.
And can you tell the court where they were sitting?
They were sitting towards the back, very back row, to the right, in the same area as the other
Olsons.
couple.
Okay. And you indicated that you heard some type of commotion or talking or something going on.
When I originally got there, that's correct.
Okay. Did you look in that direction?
I did.
Could you see?
Just silhouettes, essentially.
Okay. Did you hear any conversations?
At which point are you referencing towards? Because I heard two different conversations that happened. Once right before the preview started, and then after the preview started, then I
Okay.
heard the additional.
All right. Well, let's talk about the conversation prior to the preview starting.
Okay.
What did you hear and from whom?
Just bickering. It wasn't really audible. I couldn't hear what they were saying. It just took my attention to them. But like I said, once the preview started playing, I lost concentration. I focused back on the movie.
So is it fair to say that you could not discern what Mr. Reeves was saying and what Mr. Olson was saying? You just heard bickering.
Exactly, that's correct.
Okay. Did that alarm you, or did you? Did it raise any suspicions?
My focus was towards that, but it wasn't enough to, raise some red flags.
All right. To be concerned.
Right.
So you said you kind of just played it off, and then you're watching the previews.
Exactly.
Does anything else happen?
After the second preview, I again heard bickering again, so I focused my attention towards the same area. At this particular moment, I saw a cell phone screen lit up, and I heard, I believe it's Chad, say something along the lines of texting my daughter, followed by some other words.
Okay. Let me just stop you there for a minute. Was Mr. Olson standing up? Was he sitting down?
At that particular moment, he was sitting down, because I saw the cell phone screen lit. It looked like it was either in his lap or maybe mid-chest.
Did you hear a response from Mr. Reeves?
I heard something, but it was inaudible. I really couldn't tell what was said.
Okay. What happens after that?
After that, I saw a silhouette, because like I said, I couldn't identify what color shirt they were wearing. It was just essentially silhouettes. So I saw someone stand, I heard some crumpling, and then I saw like motion of something being thrown when I heard the object landed. I then heard Curtis say something along the lines of either "I'll teach you" or "I'll show you," throw popcorn at me, then followed by the gunshot.
Okay. Did you at any time see Mr. Olson hit, strike, or touch Mr. Reeves in any way or any fashion?
No, I did not.
Did you see him hit him with a cell phone or throw a cell phone at him?
No, I did not.
And the crumpling that you heard, what did you associate it with?
At first, I didn't know what it was until after the word popcorn was used. And then it came to me that it obviously looks like a bag of popcorn being ruffled.
Okay. Did you actually see Mr. Reeves shoot Mr. Olson?
I did.
Did you see Mr. Reeves with a gun in his hand, or what? Tell us what you saw.
I saw the silhouette of a man standing, followed by the flash from the muzzle of the handgun.
Yes, sir.
Then I originally thought that maybe it was a warning shot because I saw Chad still standing. Then a few seconds later, I saw him collapse.
Okay. Did you hear any statements from Mr. Olson?
No, I did not.
The one statement that you attribute to Mr. Reeves, that you indicated it was something like "throw popcorn in my face," was that after the shot or before the shot?
Before the shot.
Okay, so before the shot, you hear him say, "throw popcorn in my face," and then the shot.
That's correct.
Did you see Mr. Olson walking or attempt to walk?
From the
After being shot, what happens to him?
From what I could tell, it looked like he was just standing, and then he collapsed. I didn't see him try to walk or anything of that nature. I didn't see him try to leave or try to go anywhere else. I just saw him collapse.
Okay. Tell us what you did then.
Like I said, I originally thought it was a warning shot, so I kind of stayed in my area. I really didn't, want to rush over there because I didn't know if the shooter was still armed or what he planned on doing. Once I could, assess the situation, I went over to Chad, and I assessed him, and then I called 911.
Okay. Did you start doing chest compressions?
Not immediately because he still had a pulse and he was still breathing.
Did you eventually take your shirt off to try and stop the bleeding?
To apply pressure, yes, sir.
And did you then start chest compressions?
Not immediately because he like I said, he was still
Right.
breathing. I then asked, after while I was on the phone with the 911, I asked for a flashlight to assess Chad's motor functions, and I checked his pupils to see if they would react to light, and they did not, which usually indicates that his brainstem was not receiving adequate blood or oxygen.
Is that a bad sign?
It's a very bad sign.
Did you continue to do the chest compressions until the paramedics and so on?
Someone was originally doing chest compressions, but they didn't look like they were full deep chest compressions, so I asked to relieve him and take over chest compressions. I then resumed the chest compressions, and Chad did an agonal breath. I stopped, looked for any kind of chest movement to indicate breathing. I felt for a pulse, didn't feel any. Resumed chest compressions again. Then after maybe the 20th chest compression, there was another agonal breath, followed by some fluid being filled up in his lungs, crackles, and blood exiting his mouth. I then resumed chest compressions until paramedics arrived.
Thank you, Mr. Friedhoff.
Okay.
I don't have any further questions, Judge.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Mr. Escobar, you may inquire.
Good afternoon, Mr. Friedhoff.
To you as well.
Mr. Friedhoff, do you know what time you got to the movie theater?
Yes, I do.
What time?
The movie theater itself, or the
I guess I should say Theater 10.
Theater 10, we went inside at 1:19 p.m.
Okay, and so when you went inside the theater, the previews were not showing?
At that particular moment, not yet.
Okay, so you and your girlfriend
That's correct.
sat down.
Correct.
And you've described where you sat if you're looking at the screen.
Correct.
you would be on the left side?
Left side, that's correct.
Okay, you would be on the left side of the theater, is that correct?
Correct.
Now, if I remember correctly, there is an aisle that comes up off that left side, correct?
Correct.
And there's a center section of seating.
I suppose.
Is there a left section of seating?
I don't believe so.
Okay, so just a center section
Correct.
of seating. And so you believe that you sat near the aisle,
Maybe a quarter of the way in.
a quarter of the way in. How many seats would you suspect?
I don't know, maybe 4, 5, 6, possibly.
Possibly up to 6.
Correct.
Okay. And you believe that you sat, or at least that Mr. Olson sat, at least 1 or 2 rows behind
Behind
you.
me, to the right.
So if and to the right.
That's correct.
Okay. So if you were seated, you would have to go 2 rows back and then to the right in order to find Mr. Olson's seat. Is that correct?
Approximately, yes.
Okay. And beside Mr. Olson, was his wife seated with him?
Correct.
Okay. Was she seated to his left or to his right as he's looking at the screen?
I just saw silhouettes. I couldn't tell where exactly she was sitting.
So you couldn't even tell it was a woman?
You're asking me to speculate.
No, that's what I'm saying. You couldn't even tell it was a woman?
I just saw the gentleman standing.
Okay. And as you saw the gentleman standing, the only thing you say you could see was a silhouette.
Silhouette, yes, sir.
You couldn't tell the age of the individual?
I could not.
You couldn't tell what he was wearing in clothing?
I could not.
You couldn't even tell how tall he was?
I couldn't give an exact height, but I could tell he wasn't short.
And in order for you to see that silhouette, you were having to turn your body.
My back towards, my girlfriend was sitting to the right of me, so I had to turn back and focus my attention towards that direction.
And so if your girlfriend's seated to your right, you were having to look through the space between you and your girlfriend.
Correct. So I'm looking to pass my girlfriend to the right.
To the right. And back.
And back, yes,
At
sir.
least 2 rows.
Yes, sir.
And so, how long after you first sat with your girlfriend there, how long after that did you first look back and see Mr. Olson?
Minutes.
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 Had the preview started already?
I believe they just, like the opening scenes, like, to turn off your cell phones, to silence them, that originally, I caught my attention, and then once I saw the preview start playing, I went back to the screen.
Did you silence your phone?
I always have my phone on vibrate.
Okay. And so the announcement came up and the preview started, correct?
Correct.
Things are now getting loud in there as a result
Correct,
of
from the
previews.
movie, correct.
You got music, noise, conversation, right?
Correct.
People talking, all kinds of things going on.
Correct.
And so you say you look back because with all that commotion, you say you heard something.
I did.
Okay. And what is it that you heard?
I heard Chad, I saw the cell phone screen lit up, and I heard him say something about texting my daughter.
Okay,
And
let's stop.
this was after the second preview, so it was in between previews.
I want to know the first time that you looked back.
Okay.
Okay? The first time you looked back, what is it that you were able to see? You were looking through you and your girlfriend.
I wasn't really able to see anything the first conversation that took place. I just focused my attention towards that because I heard some commotion. Then I didn't see anything that raised my alarm, so I went back to focusing on the TV screen.
Okay, so let me see if I understand this correctly. When you first looked back,
Correct.
you didn't see any commotion going on
No, I did not.
2 rows behind you, to the right.
Correct.
And so you glanced over there and you immediately looked back.
Correct.
You're now focused on the previews again.
Correct.
You were interested in those.
Correct.
You wanted to see what kind of movies were coming up.
It just caught my attention.
And when you're looking at those previews, not only are you're focusing because you want to know a little bit about what that show is about, correct?
I suppose any person would.
Right. It's an attention grabber, correct?
Correct.
And normally when you have those previews, they're louder because they want to grab your attention, correct?
I would suppose so.
Okay. So now you're focused forward.
Correct.
You having popcorn or drinks with your girlfriend?
Correct.
You have a popcorn in your
I
hand?
think we just had something to drink.
Just something to drink?
Actually, I don't even think we had anything because we got there right when the movie started, so we just skipped the concessions and went straight there.
Right when the movie started?
I'm sorry, right when the show was about to start, because I said we went at 1:19 and the show starts at 1:20.
Okay. Okay, and so now you've indicated on direct examination that you had an opportunity for the second time to look back, correct?
Correct.
Okay, you're seated.
Correct.
Those seats are kind of cushy, correct?
I would suppose so, yeah.
They recline, correct?
Correct.
Comfortable?
I would say so, yes.
And so what caused you to now look back the second time?
Because I again heard the confrontation take place, and then I just saw everything unfold.
Okay, let me hear what you heard. What did you first hear
The first
that
confrontation,
caused you to look back the second time?
just an elevated voice. It wasn't yelling, but it was just enough to grab my attention.
Okay, so on the second occasion that you had to look back, the only thing that caused your attention was elevated voice.
Correct.
Could you tell what that elevated voice was saying?
Part of it was inaudible, but I did hear texting my daughter.
Okay, so the only thing that you heard of that elevated voice was texting my daughter.
Correct.
That's it.
That's it.
Okay, and so then you looked back, and what are you able to see?
I then heard
No,
another.
what are you able to see? I don't
At
want.
this, like I guess I just saw a cell phone screen lit up,
Okay.
and at that particular moment, that's all I saw.
Okay, so now, when you saw this cell phone screen lit up, was that silhouette standing or seated?
I believe they were seated.
Okay, so you believe that Mr. Olson at that point in time in silhouette, okay, was seated.
Correct.
And you're indicating that that phone was in his lap.
Either in his lap or maybe mid-chest, as if he's holding it, just to show like, hey, I'm showing my, texting my daughter. It was either in his lap, but I don't believe he was standing.
Okay, and so what kind of phone was it?
It had to have been a smartphone of some kind because it had an LCD screen.
So you could
I couldn't
see-
tell what it was.
You could see, even though you have high backs in those chairs, right?
I'm sorry?
There are high backs. in
I
those
could
chairs.
still see the phone. That's correct.
So you're saying that between your seat and two rows with high backs, you could see a phone that you've described now as a smartphone on Mr. Olson's lap,
That's correct.
and he was seated.
He was either seating or it was raised, elevated, but I don't believe he was standing.
Okay, now, do you know what he was doing with that phone?
I presume texting his daughter.
No, do you know what he was doing with that phone?
No, I do not.
Okay. Do you know what hand he had that phone in?
I believe it looked like it was in his right hand.
And so you heard those mere three words,
Correct.
and do you now look back at
I
your
I still focused attention on the screen. I'm
See?
sorry, on the area that was the confrontation that was taking place.
You're still not seeing Mrs. Olson?
I still do not see her, no.
The only one that you're seeing now is a silhouette of a person sitting.
Correct.
Do you see a silhouette of a person sitting beside him?
No, I do not.
So to the best of your recollection here today, you think that the seats on either side of them are empty?
I can't, you're asking me to speculate. I don't know. I just saw the person sitting there.
Okay. And so why are you continuing to look
At who?
at that silhouette?
Because it grabbed my attention.
Okay, well, you saw that the silhouette was there. You couldn't tell any detail of the silhouette, correct?
Okay.
And so you didn't go back to look at the previews?
No, because everything was still unfolding. It didn't just stop.
Okay.
It kept on continuing.
Okay, so what did you see next?
I then heard some, again, inaudible dialogue.
Inaudible?
Inaudible. I couldn't hear what was said. I then heard something being crumpled and then thrown.
Oh, you heard something being crumpled.
Crumpled, yes, like
At the time
crumpled.
that you were hearing that noise, you didn't know what it was.
I did not know what it was.
Okay. And then you're saying you hear something being thrown. How can you hear something being thrown?
Because you heard something crumple and you hear the impact of it landing or hitting its intended object.
Okay, so you heard an impact.
Correct.
After you hear this crumpling, you actually hear an impact 2 rows, at least 2 rows behind you.
Correct.
in the same general area as you saw the silhouette of Mr. Olson.
Correct.
Now what happens?
Followed by that, I heard, again, the inaudible, after the bag is thrown,
Well, you didn't see the bag thrown, right?
I just saw silhouette of movement of something being thrown. I couldn't tell what it was, but I did hear something being thrown.
Okay, so let's make sure that when we testify then, just tell me what you actually
I'm
know.
going to object to him admonishing the witnesses. It's not his role, it's
Sustain.
not his job.
Sustain. Just ask the questions, all right? He's answering it. If you don't like the answers, don't ask any more questions.
So what's the next step?
After the bag is thrown, I then hear someone say, either I'll teach you or I'll show you to throw popcorn at me. I then saw the flash from the muzzle of the gun fire, and I saw Mr. Olson standing for a couple of seconds, and then I originally thought he did a warning shot because I saw him still standing. Then I saw him collapse.
Okay. Let me ask you a couple of questions. I'm going to show you what's been marked as defense exhibit number 3 and ask you if you've ever seen that exhibit.
This is what I wrote.
That is a copy, a correct copy of what you wrote on January the 13th of 2014?
Correct.
And I want you to look at it all and make sure that there's been no deletions or additions from what you wrote on that date.
This is correct.
Now, in that particular statement that you wrote, this was at a time that was right then, right when the event had taken place, correct?
Correct.
Much fresher in your mind.
I would. There was a lot of stuff going on, so yes, I would say that this is correct.
Meaning that it's a fresh time in your life of the event, right?
Correct.
Right when it happened.
Right.
Certainly much fresher in your mind than today.
Correct.
And you knew of the importance of that particular document, correct?
I've never filled one of these out. I've never been in this situation before, so I just wrote down what came to my mind at that particular moment.
Now, in that document, you never mentioned that you saw any popcorn being thrown, correct?
It does not state that in the form.
In that particular form, you never made a statement that someone there in that theater said something to the effect of, that's what you get for throwing popcorn in my face or anything like that, correct?
It's not stated on the form.
That's a pretty important statement, you would think, right?
Like I said, I've never filled one of these out before. I didn't know what to include or what to write. I was actually quite nervous, so I wasn't really able to put down all my thoughts onto the paper the few minutes after everything occurred.
You would agree that that's a pretty important statement, correct?
I would say so, yes.
Now, after this event, did you have an opportunity to read newspaper accounts of this case?
I don't believe, other than what was on the news about the video of the person, I believe it was the Vietnam veteran who was on the news. That's as far as that I've read into the.
Okay, so you saw TV news.
Correct.
You saw or read paper news.
No, I have not.
No newspaper.
No.
You don't get the newspaper. You don't read it.
I'm a registered nurse. I spend a lot of time at the hospital. I take a lot of call, so most of my life revolves around that.
Okay, and so are you telling me no that you didn't?
I have not read the newspaper.
You don't read the newspaper as a common practice.
As a common practice, I do not.
Okay. Now, the only thing that you put in this statement concerning the events before and during the shooting is that there was an exchange of words, man shot the shooter, and stood up and sounded like a brief commotion occurred, right?
Correct.
Now let's talk a little bit about the actual shot. Did you see a gun in anybody's hand?
I just saw the flash of the muzzle.
So you didn't see the actual gun?
I did not see. I could tell it was a gun. I can tell you what caliber it was, what brand it was, what size it was. All I could see was the flash on the muzzle.
Okay. And could you see the silhouette that we were talking about, that first silhouette, when you look back that second time? Could you see that silhouette and where that silhouette was?
The shooter or the person that was shot?
The person that was shot.
Yes, I could see the silhouette of the person standing. Yes, sir.
And could you see whether his back was to you or his front was to you?
I believe it was, his back wasn't faced towards me. It would be his right side that was faced towards me.
So if you're, why don't you turn around for a second there if you can? 'Cause
Okay.
you're in the movie theater.
All right, which way am I facing?
The theater's right there.
Okay.
Okay? And so if, those chairs aren't sideways, are
Are you
they?
saying that wall is the screen?
The screen is the
All
wall.
right, pretend the wall is the screen, okay? All right.
Okay, and so now, if you're looking back, that's what you're doing, right?
Essentially like this. Yes, sir.
Okay, and so the silhouette that you're seeing some rows back,
Correct.
are you seeing the right side of Mr. Olson's person? Or are you seeing the back of Mr. Olson's person? Are you seeing the front of Mr. Olson's person?
I would say it's the right side and maybe a little bit turned, so I saw maybe a little part of his backside.
You tell me when to turn.
Keep on the other way. Right there.
Right there.
That's
okay.
right.
And so that's what you're seeing from your position at the time of the firing of the gun.
That's correct.
Do you see what happens with Mr. Olson after the muzzle flash?
He was still standing for a brief moment in time, and then he collapsed.
And he collapsed, you're saying, right there.
Right there. Yes, sir.
He didn't slide down.
I didn't see him move or walk around. I just saw it was a silhouette person. I can't tell you how far he moved. I just essentially just saw a silhouette.
But isn't it a fact that when you came up to him, he was almost at the aisle? That would have been the opposite.
I don't think he was at the very end of the aisle. I don't believe so. He was still some seats in. He wasn't at the very end.
Okay. On the floor?
On the floor, yes, sir.
Okay. You rush over to him?
Not originally, because I wanted to make sure it was safe to attend to Chad and provide medical care, and I felt that it was safe to do so, so I approached Chad, who was lying on the ground.
Okay. As soon as you heard the flash,
Okay.
the bang and you saw the muzzle flash, did you do anything to cover yourself?
It raised alarms, but I didn't duck and cover.
You didn't duck, you didn't do anything?
I did not.
You just continued to look
That's correct.
in that particular area?
That's correct.
And that's when you saw Mr. Olson finally come to rest?
That's correct. I saw him standing, and then I saw him collapse.
And you go over there?
That's correct.
And you start rendering assistance?
Not immediately. I saw the entry wound, so I took my shirt off to apply pressure towards it. I didn't start CPR because he was still breathing, and he did have a weak 30 pulse.
In fact, when you got to Mr. Olson, there was already a off-duty police officer at his side, correct?
At that time, I did not know that.
Or was there someone at his side?
There's someone at the head, and then someone towards the foot.
Okay. And those individuals were men?
Yes, that's correct.
Both of them were men?
Correct.
And they were working on Mr. Olson?
They weren't immediately. Were not doing CPR. They were still at his side. He was still breathing, and he did have a pulse.
Did one of them have his hand putting pressure
I believe so.
on
Yes.
the wound?
Yes. After I took my shirt off, we applied pressure.
But before you even took your shirt off?
I did not see anyone apply pressure towards the wound.
Now, just a couple more questions, I'll be done with you. Once you got to Mr. Olson, there was a lot of commotion going on, correct?
Commotion. Can you explain?
People moving.
It wasn't mass hysteria. No one was. There was no reason for. No one was really that hysterical. It was relatively calm, other than the people that were affected by this.
There were people talking.
Amongst themselves, yes, but it wasn't yelling or anything.
What were the people talking about?
I heard one of the witnesses say that the person behind him shot him. I heard Mrs. Olson sound like she was in shock, and I saw her, holding pressure to her hand.
Okay.
And then I was on 911. At this particular moment, I saw this unfolded. I called 911 and explained, gave them a situation of what just unfolded.
So are you telling me today that at no point in time when you were looking at that one silhouette, you didn't see a second silhouette holding Mr. Olson back from the seat behind him?
No, I did not.
Now, as people were talking there at the theater, were they talking about what they had witnessed?
The only one that I heard stood out was one of the witnesses say the man behind him shot him.
Okay, and do you know what that person's name was?
No, I know who he is, but I don't know what his name is.
Okay. And as the night progressed, were other people talking about the event?
While this was still unfolding?
Well, while it was still
After the
unfolding
event.
and as it progressed along that day.
Oh, at that particular moment, after I was on call 911, like I said, I focused on Chad.
At some point in time, that focus,
It overwhelmed me. I just focused my attention on Chad because he's the one that needed care.
Okay. At some point in time, you allowed the paramedics and what have you to take over, correct?
Once the paramedics came and they were at my side, I then let them take over.
Okay. And what did you do?
After that,
Yeah.
I waited at the aisle. I saw Mr. Reeves apprehended, and I waited at the side because police and deputies told us to stay where we were.
Okay. And what police and deputies said was there was a group of people from the theater and says, hey, you need to wait here, right?
Correct.
Okay. And you waited in a particular area, correct?
Correct.
And people that were waiting in that area were conversing amongst each other concerning what had happened.
I would assume so. I wasn't part of that conversation.
Well, I'm not saying that you were telling anybody, but you were hearing that, correct?
Not necessarily. I wasn't really paying attention to what they were having to say. I was with my girlfriend. We just, we didn't really discuss anything. So people said that what we did was brave. I just did something that I was trained to do and take care of.
People were talking to you about your actions as well.
Exactly.
No further questions.
No? Do you have any redirect that you feel compelled to ask, Mr. Garcia?
Yes, sir.
Judge, we would just move defense exhibit number 3 into evidence.
Any lawful objection to defense exhibit 3 coming into evidence for purposes of the bond hearing?
Judge, I would object because he's going to try and put it in as impeachment, and I'm going to put in a consistent statement that's going to be contrary to that, so.
However, we'll still accept it, and then we can hear your additional statement.
Mr. Friedhoff,
Oh, he still has it? I'll let him keep it. We'll mark it afterwards.
Mr. Friedhoff, directly after the incident occurred, did you have occasion to speak to a detective by the name of James Garapi?
After the incident?
Yes, sir.
I believe I did. Yes, sir.
Did you tell Detective Garapi that you stated that you and your girlfriend, Jenny Monero, were sitting 5 to 6 feet
Objection.
to the left of the victim? Judge, this...
Overruled as a bond hearing. We're getting through this portion here.
You indicated you observed the verbal altercation over the texting.
Let him answer at least.
Can you repeat the last question,
Yes,
please?
I'm sorry. Did you tell Detective Garapi that you and your girlfriend, Jenny Monero, were sitting 5 to 6 feet to the left of the victim?
I can't recall that.
Okay. Did you also tell him that you had observed the verbal altercation over the texting?
That part is correct.
Did you tell Detective Garapi that the incident escalated so quickly and it didn't have to?
I'm sorry?
The incident escalated so quickly and it didn't have to.
Correct.
You further stated that the victim stood up, turned and glared at the suspect for a few seconds.
Judge, I'm going to object. It's totally leading. It's testifying, actually.
Sustained. This isn't necessary, Mr.
Judge.
Garcia, and you didn't. This is not rehabilitation. He didn't ask about these things. He never said anything about these things. What you're telling me now, that's completely new. That's not part of what got introduced on direct. That's not part of what I heard on cross, and it's not even rehabilitation.
Judge, he is trying to say that this witness left things out of his written statement.
Yeah, I heard that earlier.
Okay, I'm trying to get there, and this is the full. And on impeachment, Judge, he was trying to say that he left things out, not only about the popcorn, but other things. And I think this goes to show that this is a consistent statement
that he gave at the time. He's trying to impeach him with his written statement.
I understand. So do you have any portion that is consistent with the statements that he made
Yes.
today that is
Yes.
consistent with the written statement? Let's get to that portion then.
Okay.
Judge, if I may just make an objection here.
I
This is
sustained your
correct.
last
All he
one.
needs to say is, what did you tell the officer?
I understand. You may inquire, Mr. Garcia.
Okay, thank you, Judge. Did you tell Detective Garapi that the defendant said, "You just threw popcorn at me"?
I heard the words throwing popcorn at me. That I remember him saying clearly.
Sir, the question was, did you tell that to Detective Garrett?
Oh, that's correct.
Okay.
And then you indicated that he pulled out a gun from his pants and he shot the victim in the chest.
I don't know where he...
Sustained. I didn't hear that in direct. I didn't hear that in cross. That's the first time I'm hearing that. We're not doing new things. So this is redirect. If you've got something that you want to rehabilitate on, ask that. But if the next one's not a rehabilitation, it's the last one. What do you got?
May I have a moment, Judge?
You may.
I think that was the only thing that I needed to clarify, Judge, the fact that he did tell the deputies about throwing the popcorn.
Okay.
I have no further questions.
All right. Thank you, sir. You are excused. All right. Now let's talk about what kind of break we're going to take, or if we're done for the night, because it's now 6:25. If we take a break, let's say we call it 30 minutes. That means it'll really be 35. We'll be back here at 7 o'clock. You still have 3 witnesses, correct?
Yes, sir.
Each one of them goes 45 minutes, and we still take a few breaks in between. For comfort, that puts us getting out of here conservatively at 11 o'clock, probably more like 11:30 or midnight, because y'all are going to want to do extensive closing arguments. At some point, we have to recognize that this does not make sense. I would be the first person to say that I wanted to get this done today, but are we trying to jam the square peg into the round hole here with great futility, or are we ready to call it a day and come back on Friday or Tuesday? Or, I mean, I'll make it as convenient to you as possible, but let's be realistic here. People haven't eaten. People are tired. I've got staff that have been here for a while. Captain Ferrantelli, am I going to be able to continue to maintain security until 11 or 11:30 at night here?
Whatever you need, sir.
I appreciate your enthusiasm.
As long as I can eat.
I understand. I mean, let's be realistic here. What are we doing? Mr. Garcia, talk to your team, and Mr. Michaels, talk with your team. Stretch. You vote for break? Well, we're definitely breaking at some point, but the question is, how long? This is getting ridiculous.
Another day is what I meant.
Huh?
Another day?
Yeah. Careful. I'm getting ready to weigh in here, so let's go back on the record. Mr. Garcia, I'll hear from the state, I'll hear from the defense, I'll hear from representatives of the victim's family, and then I'll make a decision. What do you got, Mr. Garcia?
Judge, I think the prudent thing to do, and obviously we would leave it in your discretion, is to go ahead and adjourn court today, Judge, and then resume
whenever the court can give us as much time as possible. I think you indicated sometime next week, maybe Tuesday or so. Judge, and I'd like to remind the court that I told the court that this was not going to be a 3-hour hearing. It was going to go all day and into the night, and so...
I'm not blaming anybody here. I'll call it my fault. I underestimated what we were able to do.
But, Judge, we want as much time as we possibly can get from the court. We don't want to be rushed. I mean, you know, we have a lot of stuff to still do.
Okay. Defense, what's your position on that?
We would defer to the court, but we would like to do it on Friday, not next week. We're ready to finish off this hearing, and we would respectfully ask the court to allow us to do this on Friday.
Friday, you have my undivided attention as of noon. The other judges only, as I've covered lots of stuff for them, so I'll be able to get somebody as of noon to cover the remainder of my day, but I cannot give you more than as of noon. If I give you as of noon, I'm not going past 6 o'clock on a Friday night, not because, you know, I don't have any place better to be, but that being said, I don't want to tire out my courtroom staff and have people both weary and unfocused in proceeding in this matter. So the question becomes, realistically, is 6 hours with reasonable breaks enough time? If we start at noon, can we be done by 6 o'clock in your estimation, Mr. Escobar?
Your Honor, I think we can, and I will even cut my closing short in order to make sure that happens. And not cut my closing short to an extent that it's going to, damage the defense, but I feel very certain that if we start at 12 o'clock on Friday, we can finish at 6 o'clock, by 6 o'clock on Friday.
All right. Mr. Garcia.
I'm sorry, Judge. There's absolutely no way that we're going to be done, Judge. The thing about it, if you look at the cross-examination today, Mr. Escobar has gone 45 minutes to an hour on each of the witnesses. We still have witnesses left. We have video left. We have audio left. We are not going to be done by 6 o'clock.
All right. Well, then in your estimation, if we're not going to be done by 6 o'clock, we start at noon, then we're not going to be done until 1 o'clock in the morning if we keep going here because we need 30 minutes for dinner.
No, that's what I told you, Judge.
Okay.
And I told you that it would be prudent to go ahead and adjourn court today, pick another day when you can give us your full attention, from starting in the early morning and going the entire day.
I understand. Mr. Grimaldi, representative of the victim and the spouse is present. Do you have any objection to me continuing the proceedings?
No, Your Honor, I don't have any objection to continuing the proceedings. What I do have the objection is potentially having this go on and on and on in the sense that if I agree with the state 100%, and that's why I actually voiced my opinion to him. If we start on Friday, I know both counsel wants to be heard as completely as possible. We not only have that, we also have the victim's statement. There is absolutely no reason to drag anyone through this on 3 separate occasions. And I think that there is no way that we're going to be finished here if we start at noon on a Friday by 6, as you're suggesting. My suggestion would be started, as he said, in the morning, where we have all day and people can put it aside so they have the whole day in front of them.
Suppose I start at 10 a.m. on Friday. Can we be done by 6 if I start at 10 a.m., Mr. Garcia? That gives you a full 8 hours. I'll make my morning calendar.
Judge, I don't want to be in a position where I say yes and then we're not done, Judge. Hopefully, realistically, we should be able to, but I don't know what hurdles we're going to run into. I mean,
I'm not expecting you to anticipate the unexpected. I'm just saying pragmatically and realistically, if I give you 8 more court hours, do you think 8 more court hours, including a brief lunch, so that's realistically 7 hours of time, do you think we can get it done on Friday?
I mean, the other thing, Judge, we still have the issue of the video. The court hasn't ruled upon the admissibility of the video, so I'm sure that there's going to be a lengthy argument on that.
I thought I did rule on the video. I said court's not going to be closed. They can shoot it from the screen. I'm not allowing it to be released. It's part of the 30-day hold, but it's not prohibited from being filmed by TV cameras.
No, I understand that, Judge, but Mr. Escobar had legal arguments as to the admissibility of it.
All right, let me hear that. Do you have legal arguments that I'm aware of?
Judge, the only legal argument is just going to be the foundation, and I've already made that argument, and the court has ruled that you're going to allow it in, and so we're there.
I've ruled that I'm going to allow it in if foundation is made. Are you challenging foundation that was laid down?
Judge, at this point in time, they haven't made a foundation argument, and so they haven't put anybody, up to say, hey, this fairly and accurately depicts what took place, and so I would imagine.
Hold on. One at a time. Anything else you want to say before I let Mr. Garcia get going?
That's it.
Mr. Garcia, you're going to tell me that your first witness laid foundation by saying that he saw the video and it represented what he saw?
Yes, sir, Judge. And that's based upon the case law that I provided to the court, Judge.
That's the foundation that needs to be laid in order for the video to be played.
Yeah, I mean, anybody else lay any other portion of the foundation, including the custodian of the video that's going to come in and tell me that's the video?
We've waived the chain of custody, Your Honor.
All right, so you've waived the custodian, and your objection, though, still is to it being a fair and accurate representation of the depiction of what happened?
That would be it.
All right, well, I'm going to find that the foundation was made if you've waived chain of custody on the custodian records.
We have it.
So that's fine, then I'm going to make the finding that you made the foundation, and I'll admit it.
Okay.
Yeah, that I'll do. So does that speed us up at all?
Yes, it does, Judge. I mean, we took care of that in 2 minutes, so yes.
Okay, well, every once in a while I'll get one quickly. All right, I think we can do it on Friday then.
10 o'clock, Judge, though?
Okay, 10 a.m., and here's what we're going to do. Let the word go, well, let me make sure. You available 10 a.m. on Friday?
I'll make myself available.
Mr. Michaels? He's your boss, so I guess he'll make you available. All right. Mr. Grimaldi, are you and the spouse available?
Preferably not, Your Honor, but we will make ourselves available.
Everybody in the room would say preferably not. I agree, preferably not, but we got to get this done. There's two. Mostly people say no, but I just want to make sure you feel like you have the opportunity to talk to me if you need to. No? All right, good. We just wait for Ms. Summers to come back in. We're going to need him transported again on Friday in a cabin fair and tell you sorry about that. And all the same circumstances are going to apply, all the same orders.
Turn these off. I haven't turned that off, so I don't know what it's on. This is his courthouse, yes. These rooms, so he's okay with it. I'm okay with it. I'm just saying, that it's your court. There's nothing to take them out. Well, I'll go back to it. Okay, so this is my home. This is not my home. This is Judge Schicksack's court. He's on vacation. Yeah, I was. Okay, so it's going to be. How's this all going? I'm going to ask that the. Yeah. Absolutely. Yeah, I'm going to do my 8 o'clock calendar page so I can just rush over here and get set up. And I'll announce it.
All right, here's the situation. It is a rare occasion, but there's actually an extra courtroom available to me on Friday. So Friday morning, we're going to do my regular pre-trials from my 5 to 700 active felony cases in courtroom A. We're going to do my regular juveniles that are necessary in courtroom A for my 150 to 200 juvenile cases that I've got. And then we will come back in here and do this case in here exclusively. That way everybody can set up. That way the attorneys can set up in advance so that when we hit 10 o'clock, I walk in here and we get going right from there. State, you'll have your witnesses available. Did you have those gentlemen come in, or do you not need to speak to them personally?
We've taken care of it.
You've taken care of it? Thank you.
Everything's good.
All right, I think that covers everything that we need to do. And so with that in mind, we'll be at recess till 10 a.m. on Friday morning.
All rise.
1 o'clock.